Andrea, welcome back. I want to move to the economic part of our conversation here. Just remind me your organization you're with, and just a little bit as we talk about cooperative economy and how do we build democracy in our economic institutions. Organization first.
I'm Andrea Miller, and the organization is Center for Common Ground. And our mission is to empower underrepresented voters to fully participate in democracy. So it's kind of a really interesting path how I ended up really embracing and looking at the cooperative model. It was really the voters in Alabama that got me started on that.
Tell me more about that. I'd love to hear that story, and then just how it connects to, rural electric cooperatives, one of the largest segments of the cooperative economy in the United States today, one of the most powerful, but also in so many ways not looking towards the future as progressively as they could. And I think you helped me identify some of the reasons why. But tell us the story about Alabama and then to your Virginia co-op experience.
In Alabama, when we were calling the voters in 2017, and we're calling rural Alabama, like Selma in Dallas County, that was the very, very urban part. I mean, we're way out there in rural Alabama. And one of the things Lowndes County people were telling us is, I'm just not feeling like voting anymore. And we've got good phone bankers. Oh, they're engaging. They're like, why are you feeling like not voting? And they're like, well, I voted for a Republican and there's sewage in my backyard. So, it's always been there. And whoever gets the sewage out of my backyard, I'm going to vote for them. So we were able to talk some people into just going ahead and taking a chance and voting in the special election. But when we came back in 2020, people were like, no, sewage is still in my backyard. Get the sewage out of my backyard, and then we can talk. And so it was, all right, we've been going through this now since the 90s in the rural South, where there's a problem with sewage, there's a problem with clean water, there's food deserts, there's all these problems. And like Annie Lou Hamer said, people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And they're beginning to believe voting doesn't work for me. I vote, it doesn't matter who I vote for. Nothing in my life changes. So you know what? I'm not going to do it anymore. So when we came up with, and I come up with the concept of the democracy centers in 2015, we radically adjusted what they were going to have to look at, which was, what is the pain point of the people in the community? What has them feeling so oppressed that they don't even want to vote?
Right.
And in some communities in Georgia and Mississippi, people are saying, I make $23,000 a year. My electric bill is $700 a month.
Oh.
If I'm really late on my electric bill, they cut it off. They charge me $20 to turn the lights back on. I have to pay the $700, and then they charge me a shutoff fee. All right, that is really, really painful. And those folks are not serviced by an investor-owned utility. They're serviced by a rural electric cooperative where they own it. They own it. And it's like, wait a minute, you are letting a company that you own do this to you. And you're like, I what? What? You are a member owner.
Yes.
As in, just as if you had bought stock
Right.
in a public company, you have ownership, stock, whatever you want to call it, in this company that is oppressing you.
Yes.
And again, you're paying $700 a month for your electric bill. I don't think you live in a 5,000 square foot house. People are like, no, I live in a 2-bedroom house with 1 bathroom, and I'm paying $700 each and every month for my electricity. So it's like, all right, rural electric cooperative education, helping people understand that as member owners, they do have a path to do something about this oppressor. But then also looking at a rural electric cooperative election is like any other election in the world. We've got to turn out our voters and get our voters to vote. And there have been a lot of organizations that are trying to work around the edges of rural electric cooperatives. And I did have a great opportunity to talk to funders. And I said, look, an election is an election is an election. They all need the same thing. They need tools. They need people to do outreach to the potential voters. They need people to make phone calls. They need the ability to send text messaging, which isn't free. So we've started doing that through our democracy centers. So big rural electric cooperative in Georgia. We got 90,000 addresses to text. We built the phone banks and we were going to postcard them. The only problem was the postcards, the addresses showed up literally while we were in the middle of doing Virginia voter registration. So normally we handwrite each postcard.
Wow.
So it was like, ooh, our writers are all tied up with
Oh,
Virginia, and elections, they have a hard stop date. People have to register by May 4th. That means you've got X amount of time to write your cards, stamp your cards, get them in the mail, get them to the voters in Virginia. So we don't say no to our partners. So luckily we have about 313 attorneys who are volunteers. So one of our volunteers went to a local print shop and they said, okay, we will print your postcards. We will print the message on them. We will stamp them and put them in the mail. And it's going to be $8,500. Well, the organization we were really working with, they were expecting everything to be volunteer. You know, they could maybe scrape together a couple $1,000, maybe. One of our attorneys stepped up and said, you'll have a check for $9,000 in the morning. Let's make this happen.
mm.
You know, so we did it.
So how
We
did that election
got,
work then? So you people then did the members vote for that rural electric co-op in Georgia?
well, it was a listening tour. So again, the local organizers were getting people, and that's where I got that story from their listening tour, where that's what people were telling them. And they were like, we never thought it was that bad. You know, we thought maybe people were paying $500 a month, but 700, you know, and then the disconnect and the reconnect fee. I mean, that was shocking.
Yeah, well,
So,
fast forward here a little bit for me. I want to. This is such an important story, but you told me an even more compelling story for me yesterday. So what I care about is like I want to build economic democracy in every corporation in America, right? That's the big vision. But to begin, we have to start with what is democratic today, and our cooperatives, credit unions, our food co-ops. I think those are the beginning structures we have today. There's some purchasing co-ops. And if we want all of these entities to have some sense of real democracy, we have to understand that what are the rules that are keeping us back? Why don't the 120 million Americans that are part of cooperatives today feel like they're actually democratic? So tell us a little about your Virginia co-op. Have you served on the board recently? You have some understanding of what it takes to actually reform our electric co-ops to actually be democratic and actually have one member, one vote, one actual voice. Tell us a little about that story.
Well, in 2019, I ran for the board of directors of Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, which is either the second or the third largest electric cooperative in the United States, with about 182,000 member owners. So when I ran back in 2019, they have 9 directors and they always have 3 seats that are up at the same time. And they advertise there are 2 ways to vote. Number one, they used to put the ballot on the back of their magazine, which everybody immediately threw in the trash. So the first thing we had to do was run around in early June and say, don't throw the July magazine away. Your ballot is on there. And, people would say, well, how do we vote? It's on the magazine. And invariably, people would say, that thing I throw away, don't throw it away. Hang on to that one. Or the other way, if you paid your bill online, you could vote online. This was what was advertised. Well, it turns out you could also vote in the office when you went to pay your bill. They collected ballots there. So imagine a real election. I can vote at my registrar's office. I can vote by mail. I'm good with that. But then you discover you can vote at the CVS. Well, they never said you could vote at the CVS. What do you mean I could vote at the CVS? And that's what we discovered. And so people who go and pay their bill in person are frequently older, don't have credit cards, are paying in cash, and really not necessarily following a lot of this information. And they would get there, I'm here to pay my bill. And we actually had someone from our team witness this. Great. Are you aware there's a board of directors election coming up? No, I wasn't, but I'm here to pay my bill. We have some really great prizes. People are like, okay, I'm happy for you. I'm here to pay my bill. If you would like to vote in the election, that will make you eligible for the prizes. We've got a 54-inch flat screen TV that you could win. People are, really? Yes. And then they give them the ballot. Well, I don't know who any of these people are. Well, you can just say that you are going to give your proxy to the board of directors. We actually had one of our candidates, Jeff, win the election outright, and he was defeated by the proxies. Now, at Rappahannock,
well, hold on, explain that. So he won the election outright by number of ballots, putting him on the thing. But
yes.
How did the proxy? So the board has enough proxies, so the board chooses who they want of the ballot. So no matter what people actually vote, they're overridden by the board's proxy voting power.
Yes.
So if you organize,
and they elect these blank proxies in the office with people who had no intention of voting, but they signed them up for the possibility of winning a free computer or a free TV. I don't know who to vote for.
So they give the gimmick of trying to engage participation, but just do the proxy thing, pay your bill proxy thing. And so even though you got hundreds, thousands of voters to vote for you or other candidates, it didn't matter. You were trying to actually give agency to cooperative member owners to vote in an election, to be engaged as cooperative member owners, but you were come up against the brick wall of the board's corrupt processes to disenfranchise democracy in action.
Right. Now, board meetings at REC are closed to member owners. Like, wait a minute. If I own stock in Dominion Energy and I wanted to go to the board meeting, by the very that I own stock, I am entitled to go to the board meetings. Not true of Rappahannock Electric. If you are a member owner, You are not invited or entitled to go to that board meeting,
Oh,
nor do they want to give you the minutes of the board meeting unless you sign something that says, oh, I promise I will not use this in any way that the board deems to be inappropriate. What? Again, I'm a member owner and I'm supposed to have the right to amend the bylaws. Well, in order to amend the bylaws, I have to get 500 other member owners to agree this is the change they want. Perfect. I'm happy to do that. But I have to get their signatures on a special form, which they refuse to give you. So it's like, you know what? Let's clean this up legislatively.
yeah.
Let's say there will be no proxy voting in cooperatives in Virginia. No, we're not doing that. There will be no such thing. Member owners, as member owners, because we don't have a choice. In Virginia, the rural electric cooperative territory is certificated, meaning nobody else can come in that territory and sell electricity. So what was rural in the 1930s, it's now golf courses, amusement parks, and suburbs and exurbs in 2020.
Mm.
And these folks can't have any competition. So wait a minute, if there's no competition, I have to have a way of having a say and having my voice in this cooperative. I am forced to give them money every month. I've got no choice. I can't say I'd rather go deal with those people over there. And then it's like, wow. So they won't clean up their own act. Fine, I'll clean it up for them.
Yeah, no, and I think you're integrating a huge piece here around people care increasingly about the climate. People care increasingly about racial justice, diversity, equity, inclusion. And the only way I see of being able to appreciate reform is our utilities. The best path we have for decarbonization of our economy is through electricity. Obviously, transportation, cars, that's great. We're working on that. That's going to get there too. But if we convert electric cars, we have to clean up our act on the electric utility side. Now, our model of regulation is this franchise regulation. Like you said, it's a monopoly. So you have your electric or your IOU or your municipal if you're lucky. But even in that case, we're not able to have say in these institutions and changing them. So it's the Public Utility Commission, it's the State House. So you've been able to figure out the levers of power with the state in a way to actually begin to imagine a policy that would reform governance and democracy in our rural electric co-ops, which cover, I think, 70% of the American territory. It's an amazing part of the landmass of the United States that is covered by rural electric co-ops. And I forget the actual percentage.
And it's one of the fastest growing, because remember,
people are moving.
The urban areas are the urban areas. That's where the investor-owned utilities are. The urban centers are not growing that fast. It is the suburbs around them that are experiencing this huge growth. Rappahannock Electric Cooperative 10 years ago built a new coal-fired plant.
No way.
Built a new coal-fired plant, and they wanted to build another one until member owners heard about it and raised such a stink that they didn't. So they also, you have this very incestuous relationship with the board of the sales arm, the companies that sell retail electricity, and the companies that generated the G&Ts.
Right.
Well, the then president of REC was on the board of the generating utility, and REC signed a 40-year power purchase agreement with the GNC 5 years ago. And it's like, who signs a 40-year agreement on anything?
Especially with all the uncertainty around climate and injustice and this, the reality we know we only have a decade or two to really shift the tide on all of the decarbonization we want to accomplish.
All right. And so when I had the opportunity to ask that question at the annual meeting, the response was, because it takes 40 years to write down a coal-fired plant. At which point I said, you do realize you said that out loud so other people can hear.
Yeah. Yeah, Andrea, there's so much to unpack here. And I think part of what I see emerging is the potential of the social movements of our time, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the Sunrise Movement, the youth climate activists that are beginning to show real power in changing Congress. But what you bring is an imagination for constitutional change, right? And I think and you have a path of lobbying there. And then you also bring this amazing sense of operating in partnerships and deep collaboration that brings about enfranchisement of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of voters that wouldn't have otherwise been able to access that. But they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, as like you said, because the sewage in their backyard, the $700 electricity bill. So paint for us just a little bit and only a few minutes here on the Democracy Center vision. For me, you got me excited about a new kind of cooperative, not this cooperative of the rural electric kind of varietal, but a kind of cooperative that genuinely gives agency and autonomy in an economic way for people that have so little power in the economy. And we all know if you can't get by every day, how are you going to have civic participation, right? So we don't have civic or political participation unless we have economic, just basic needs being met. And I think so much of the impact investor community I see seeks abroad to do microfinance, to help give loans to people, to help have some sense of dignity in their own lives. And I think what I want to say is we need to reform business to be not just about basic human rights and dignity, but ideally about human flourishing. And how do we evolve organizational structures? And to me, employee ownership, worker cooperatives are the only way we're going to build broad wealth in America. And so community wealth building is, to me, the strategy. So give me a little sense of how the Democracy Center vision you see beginning to build on some of this vision we've talked about a little bit.
Again, this goes back to what does the community need? Democracy centers are physical places located in communities where there are really big needs. Our Democracy Center in Hawkinsville, Georgia, they distribute food every Friday. They are in a community that is hungry. In Florence, South Carolina, the Democracy Center there, they are working on coming up with clean water for the community. They are also going to go deep into low country with mobile broadband to help those voters sign up to get their COVID shots. South Carolina didn't give people a phone number. People that are rural don't have internet, don't have computers. That doesn't exist. So we never thought we were going to be going into the free internet business, but we are. And we're doing the same thing in Richmond. We are going to be providing free internet to the folks who don't have internet. You don't have internet, your kids really didn't get a chance to go to school very much in 2020. Schools down in March. Some are just beginning to open up and the kids are really behind. We also, many of these communities are in food deserts. But when you look at southern states, you look at any city in a southern state, and then you look about an hour east or west, there are small family farms there who are desperate to sell their goods, but they can't compete with the big agribusiness selling to Walmart. So they're struggling and beginning to go out of business. So we see creating food cooperatives where people own the purchase of the food collectively, and now they have fresh food rather than food in a box or a can. And we begin to be able to work on the health disparities. And once people are eating and they're starting to see that there can be a glimmer of hope, you can tell them when they're coming to get their food, why don't you join us on Thursday night? And we're going to be talking about how we're going to have community internet. What? We're going to have community internet where the community is going to own the internet. Really? And we're looking at maybe opening a community grocery store where the community owns the grocery. People are like, we never even knew this was possible. And then you bring in the literacy programs where you help people understand how they can grow their money. And then we look at the financial cooperatives, otherwise known as credit unions, which are not baby banks. And now we look at what would be the possibility? How many of us are there that are, this could be interesting, all right, who's got $10?
Yeah, you said credit union, the whole idea that we could extend $10 to each other to help tackle the challenges you just laid out, which are fundamentally the challenges of, um, uh, like you said, food, like you said, work, like you said, education for our kids who have lost a year of education. And it's our future. And one of the big questions I have been trying to ask myself more recently is, what does it mean to be a good ancestor? And when I think about all the issues you've exposed in this conversation today, it reminds me that the civil rights movement is needed at the scale 5 times we saw last year, again this year and next year and this decade. And I think one thing I've been thinking a lot about is this pandemic has exposed racial injustice for many people that haven't been attentive to it. I think it's also exposed in the corporate world, just this a new focus on inclusion and equity and diversity in a way that I think people are genuinely seeking. If we are to be inclusive in our economy, it might mean that we have to share power. We might need to make decisions together. We might need to be attentive to the least of those. And for me, our Catholic social tradition helps me see that the only way we have the common good, the only way we can seek the common good is if we're attentive in real solidarity to those most oppressed, most marginalized in our community. And so by putting ourselves with those on the margins, we can begin to redeem ourselves, repair the world. Tikkun Olam, we can begin to seek solutions. So to me, your democracy center vision, the work you're promulgating here is about beginning to be good ancestors to those that come after us, with the climate, with our communities.
And I want to make one more really important point, and that is that when we work with communities, it is very important to allow the community to tell you where their pain is and not you tell them where
Yeah.
you want it to be.
Yes.
Because that has not worked in the
Yes.
past. And the communities are like, no, we're not even worried about that. Our problem is food and the internet. That other thing, it's nice, it's interesting, but that's not a problem that we buy. Our kids are hungry and they can't go to school. So in Richmond, they're actually doing after school programs, and they're going to probably do school programs because that is what that community needed.
Well, I think what you just articulated, that is to me the Catholic principle of subsidiarity. The community, what do they need? And I think the only way we have non-extractive investments as an impact investor, so many of us are trying to think about what does it mean to be non-extractive? It means to have the business designed by the community and with them having power and governance and ownership of the enterprise, right? So we think of the transform finance principles of Morgan Simon and resource generation, others. It's engaging the community and listening in the way you have, in the way you've told us so many stories here today, that they need to be involved in that process. And then there needs to be a fair sharing of risk and return. Should the risk all be with the community? So if the venture fails, they have to sit with it and try to figure out how to get internet the next time, how to build a food system that works. I think you're revealing to us the way forward. Any final thoughts you want to impart with us, Andrea? We should circle back in a few more weeks and kind of talk about the capital structure that might be needed to actualize your vision on the democracy centers. Not to do today, but just any final thought for this cohort of community sharing this with?
What was really eye-opening for me was when I originally envisioned these, I, like so many other people, thought, oh, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I know exactly what the community needs. Luckily, there was something wise enough in me that said, let the community talk first. Let them say, well, what we need is this and what we need is that. And it's very, very important that we not come in solutions to a non-problem.
Andrea, thank you for your prophetic voice, your prophetic witness, your prophetic storytelling. Um, to me, this is building the beloved community, is being in relationship with you, helping enfranchise people and communities across the country. I learned so much about our country through your stories. And so I'm so grateful for your partnership and look forward to talking again soon. Thank you.